Hare Krishna, everyone. You are watching Bhakti Kids Sangha, and I am the founder, Abhidheya devī, dāsī. And today we have an exciting special segment for you. We have gathered here today to celebrate World Sanskrit Day. Now, if you Google Sanskrit, Google will probably tell you that Sanskrit is a dead language. But I think the students here would beg to differ. We have been learning Sanskrit over the last year, and today we're going to be demonstrating for you a little bit what we've been learning. So Google says Sanskrit is a dead language, but of course, when you are practicing Sanatana Dharma or you're a Vaishnava, many of our texts are in Sanskrit. So for us, it is very, very, very much alive. And that is why we have been making the effort to learn this wonderful language. So before we get started, I would love to bring my wonderful student Avni in to give us a little prayer to get us started. Can I hand over to you, Avni?
Okay. Namaste, Suprabhatam, Mama Nama Avni. Today I'll be reciting Patami Sanskritam for World Sanskrit Day. Patami Sanskritam Nityam, Vadami Sanskritam Sada, Dhyayami Sanskritam Samyak, Vande Sanskritamataram. I read Sanskrit regularly. I speak Sanskrit always. I think and meditate on Sanskrit by all means. I salute the mother of Sanskrit.
Beautiful, Avni. Thank you so much for that. And we do this prayer at the start of every class. A different student will lead, but we start each class with this little meditation on the Sanskrit Bhasha language. So I want to share with you, just before we get into looking at the students' work, why learn Sanskrit? If Google is saying that Sanskrit is a dead language and there's not so many people speaking on a day-to-day basis Sanskrit, why bother to learn the language at all? So let's look at a couple of examples as to why that might be. So I'd say the the topmost answer would be that it was a direct instruction by our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Now, I've got a beautiful quote here that comes from a letter that Prabhupada wrote, and it reads like this: Sanskrit should be compulsory for all our children to learn, and anyone who has an elementary knowledge of the grammar and alphabet should begin to teach it. Isn't that a wonderful quote? Because Prabhupada really understood that English is a language in which it's a very international language. That's why all the books got translated into English first. And that's why he requested that all children learn English. But he also requested that all children be given the opportunity to learn Sanskrit as well. And so this is why I started the Bhakti Kids Sangha Sanskrit School alongside everything else that we were doing, because I really believed in this instruction of Srila Prabhupada's that children should have the opportunity. Now, they may choose to take it or not, but they would like to have that opportunity to learn Sanskrit, and it should be made available to them by us, the adults. So that's the main reason. And if it's a fantastic reason, it's a huge reason, it's a really important reason as to why we should be facilitating Sanskrit classes for our students. Now, the second reason is that most of our scriptures are in Sanskrit. Now, we do have, because Gaudiya Vaishnavism is from a region in India. So we do have lots of our bhajans and some of our texts are in the beautiful language of Bengali. But most texts and Vedic texts are written in Sanskrit. So it is helpful to have, at least as Prabhupada says, an elementary understanding or knowledge of the language in order to help us fully understand the texts. Now, let's talk a little bit about pronunciation errors. We've all been there. I've made them. We all make them. But a lot of these pronunciation errors could easily be solved with some basic knowledge. What's the difference between a short vowel and a long vowel? What's the difference between Mahaprana and Alpaprana, or aspirated and non-aspirated? These nuances actually go a long way into helping you understand the meaning, convey the meaning, and also pronounce the words correctly. And it's an ongoing journey that takes practice. To fully understand the text and have some foundational knowledge from the text, it's very useful to understand or have some foundational knowledge of the language that they are written in. Now, let's look at some examples of this outside of our own tradition, okay? So Jewish people, when they have their bar mitzvah, when the young men have their bar mitzvah, they will memorize whole verses in the original heritage language and then recite them at their bar mitzvah. Muslims of whatever lineage will all memorize verses from the Quran in the original language and recite them. So they're not reciting English translations, okay? We're not seeing other groups doing that. Now, there's nothing wrong with English translations. They were very, very helpful to me in the beginning for understanding the text. And I'm not saying that they're wrong or that they're bad, but what I'm saying is that we could actually all put a little bit of time into understanding a little bit about the language, and then we can actually recite in the language rather than relying on English translations like all of the other cultures do. And I would say that that's something that we should try not to lose as a society and as a group. Now, the last thing is a really, really major point, because I know that a lot of the parents watching this, they are very, very into the NAPLAN tests and they want their children to get great results and they all want them to go to selective schools. And hey, I understand that passion. But what I will say is that learning Sanskrit trains the brain, builds the brain, and actually physically makes parts of the brain bigger that deal with thought processing, that deal with memory, all of those things actually enlarge in the brain. Scientific studies have been done on this, where they have scanned the brains of pundits who have been reciting Sanskrit from a young age, and certain areas of their brain are physically larger than the average person. Now, all of that wonderful brain power can then be put into our academic learning, into artistic pursuits, into problem solving, into innovative thinking, all of those things. So if you think that Sanskrit is something dry and it belongs on the shelf, it's a living, breathing thing that actually can really assist our spiritual life and our material life as well. So I think I've made the points. I'm going to move on. Now, you heard me mention short and long vowels, aspirated and non-aspirated. Why are these things important? The Sanskrit alphabet is very different to the English alphabet. There are many, many nuances. There's short vowels that last for one beat. Then we have long vowels that look quite similar to their short counterparts, but they last for 2 beats. Then there are protracted vowels that last for 3+ beats. And then we have aspirated syllables and non-aspirated syllables. Now, you're probably wondering, why is this important? Why does this matter? I'll give you an example of why this matters, and then the children are going to present some examples to you as well. So let's look at the bottom right picture. We all recognize Vamanadev, right? The dwarf incarnation. If we know our Dasha avatar, we know who Vamanadev is. But slangly, over the course of time, we've all started saying Vamana, no long vowel, no long R, just Vamana. Vamana means vomit. So the meaning can change drastically when we make a change like that, or when a cultural change creeps in, when we have different accents, people from different countries. So Vamana becomes Vamana, and then we've lost the meaning. I'd really like to come to you, Avni, to talk about the top left picture. Could you tell us what's happening there?
This is the difference between masculine and feminine. This is an amazing example. Krishnaha means Krishna or black. Krishna means Draupadi. A vowel ending in a visarga, aha, ihi, uhu, for example, is masculine. A vowel ending in a long syllable, a, I, u, is feminine. An example of a feminine word is my name, Avni, which means earth.
Such a beautiful explanation. Thank you so much for that, Avni. So she's talking about the difference between Pullinga and Strilinga, okay? So Krishna means black. But the anta, the ending of the word changes according to the gender, and actually the meaning slightly as well in this case, because Krishna means Draupadi. It is not a feminization of Krishna as people often think. So that's a really, really good example of how seemingly small change drastically changes the meaning. I want to come to you, Krisha, and talk about the next picture. Could you explain the next picture to us?
So, Patram means leaf, and Patram means vessel. This is a great example to tell you why it is important to always pronounce the long R. Patram has a short R, Patram has a long R, and both of the words are Napumsakalinga, which means they are neuter.
Beautiful. Thank you for that explanation, Krisha. Beautifully explained. So if you look at these two words, they are almost spelt identically. The only difference is that the pa has come with a long ah, as Krisha has pointed out to us. So patram, which means leaf, and patram means a vessel. So again, the meaning has changed with just losing that vowel. Padma, I'd like to come to you. He's our youngest class member at 9 years old. Padma, can you tell us about the bottom picture? Can you explain what's going on there for us?
Here's another great example. Halam and Palam. They are both Napumsakalinga. Halam, at the first letter Pa, it's Mahaprana, which is aspirated, which is puff of air. And Palam is meat. It's also Napumsakalinga, and it doesn't use a puff of air, which is Alpaprana. So it's a non-aspiration.
So, as Padma has beautifully explained for us there, these two aksharas, these two sounds, come directly next to each other in the alphabet. They are so close, they are side by side. They are almost identical, but as Padma beautifully explained, one has an aspiration and one doesn't. So there's Alpaprana Pa, Mahaprana Pa. Okay, and he's pointing that difference out and explaining that there's a discharge of air that happens, and when we lose the Mahaprana, we're accidentally saying meat and not fruit. So again, we're seeing how the meaning can drastically change when we don't observe these pronunciation characteristics. Thank you so much, guys, for explaining that. That was awesome. So let's have a look at some of the Bhakti Kids Sangha Sanskrit School junior students. So these are our youngest students. They are in a separate class. And there's 3 students here. One is 8, one is 4, and one is 6. And these guys are a little bit younger than these students, than the senior students. So we have been using some different teaching methods with them. We are using a lot more songs and arts and crafts and puppets and stories, because the youngest one is only 4 years old. But they are picking up the vocabulary really, really nicely. And as you can see here they are at home, and they are learning to write their swaraha, their vowels. You guys will remember this. This happened for you right almost a year ago, learning your vowels. So they are going all the way back to the beginning and learning their vowels. And what a great creative way of doing that. They're using watercolors. Okay, they're using watercolors to express the shapes and learn the shapes. And then we're gradually moving into writing into a book. But as you can see, they're quite young and they're being very creative. And this is such a fantastic way to learn. One of the things we really try and do here with the Sanskrit school is we try to make learning as creative and dynamic as possible. I think some of us, especially those of you that learned Sanskrit back in India, we have like these memories of like very strict teachers and lots of rules and lots of memorization. But I would actually argue that Sanskrit learning can be very fun, very dynamic, and that you can actually integrate your nature into it. So you can see these children are artistic. They're using their artistic nature. Krisha is artistic. She uses her artistic nature in her work. You know, so we see this time and time again. Padma is musical. He brings his musical skills to his Sanskrit learning. So Sanskrit learning does not have to be dry or boring, and it can be personal to you. And here is a beautiful example of that with the junior students. Now let's look at the Bhakti Kids Sangha senior students and who have joined with us today, who are in the live with us today. So we have Krisha, who is 11, we have Avni who is 11, and we have Padma who is 9. And in this picture, you can see they have made consonant posters. Now, we ran a little competition for this. They learnt their consonants over the course of several weeks, because there's quite a lot of consonants to learn. And once they really got to grips with which are the nasals, which are the Mahaprana, which are the Alpaprana, which is the Ka group, which is the Cha group, these are all the different groups within the consonants. They then went and took their creativity and they made these beautiful posters, and they've color coded, you can see in the pictures, all the different groups. They've actually made a really dynamic poster, and it's up in their house, in their room, where they can see, so that they're constantly being reminded of the Sanskrit alphabet. So I'd like to come to you first, Krisha, and ask you, what is your favorite part about learning Sanskrit?
Well, I actually have quite a few. My first one is I like learning vocabulary. It's really fun. And learning Sanskrit and comparing it to Hindi, because that's my mother language. And then also whenever I do Sanskrit, I like to be artistic and be creative. But the best bit is about my teacher, Abhidheya Mataji. She is the best teacher ever, and I couldn't have done so well without her.
Oh, thank you, Krisha. I didn't actually know that she was going to say that. So thank you, Krisha. That's really, really sweet. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's lovely. Avni, coming to you, what are your favorite parts about learning Sanskrit?
Like Krisha, I have a few too. I quite enjoy reading and writing Sanskrit, but if I didn't like come into this class, I wouldn't have learned anything.
Beautiful reflections, Avni. Thank you so much. What about you, Padma? Could you share your reflections on what you enjoy about learning in Sanskrit class?
Yep. So personally, I actually like all the things. So like reading, writing, and I think the vocabulary.
And what's your absolute favorite thing, Padma? Because I can think of something that is your absolute passion when you're in Sanskrit class. What is it?
Mostly, I like the Bhagavad Gita chanting.
Oh, yes. This is our Bhagavad Gita champion of the group, that if we ever forget the chanting, Padma will remind me. And what a wonderful service that is. So you can see these children are really motivated, aren't they? They're really lit up by this. And that's because we're combining Sanskrit learning with their individual natures as well. So let's have a look at some of the examples of some of their amazing work. So here you can see there's consonant work here. And you can probably observe we use color coding a lot in these classes, because I really believe that all children are at least in part visual learners, and auditory as well, but visual plays a huge part in learning, even for adults as well. And color coding can be a really useful way when you're learning a new language, and these are all new shapes, of helping your eye to see the different groups. So you can see here in the middle, Avni's done a really nice poster here in the middle picture, and she's done the car group in green, but then she's done all the nasals in a different color. So she's used color coding to her advantage. And then we look to the bottom right picture, and you'll see Krisha's done a really comprehensive Varnamala there, and she's written the groups in her notes so that she remembers that car group, that's a guttural group. Cha group is palatal. So they've got keeping really comprehensive notes here as well, as you can see. Now, here's some of their advanced work. They have been learning for a year, and they have not stopped at just learning the Varnamala. They have been learning Gunitaksharam, and they have also been learning compound consonants as well, which is Samyuktaksharani. So here's some really nice examples of that dependent vowel work that I was talking about. Now, dependent vowels are what happens when different vowels are paired with a consonant to create a new sound. And you can see here, I've made some worksheets. You can see the Apple worksheet. Again, we're trying to make it colorful and engaging and dynamic, and not just flat and one-dimensional. And Avni here has gone through and filled in all of the formulas. And there's another really nice example of Guni Taksharam. And then I want to bring your attention to the picture on the far right, Krisha's work. You can really see how advanced they're thinking here. She's got 3 columns: masculine, feminine, and neuter. She's arranged the words according to their gender, and then she has done the split strategy as well. That really shows quite a high level of understanding. And this also means that we're less likely to mispronounce because we're breaking up the individual sounds in the words. She's understanding that some words are pullinga, some words are strilinga, some words are napumsakalinga. So that understanding is really starting to come. They're also understanding about number. They're understanding about gender, they're understanding about person, they're understanding about how verbs change according to number and person. So really in a year, these guys have learned a remarkable amount. So that brings me to Padma's favorite part. We are going to recite some Bhagavad Gita verses for your listening pleasure, and we're going to begin with Padma.
Atha Srimad Bhagavad Gita Dvadashodhyayah Bhakti Yoga Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Veshyamano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetaha Te Me Yukta Tamamataha.
Ye tvaksharamanirtesham avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam sanniyamendriyagramam sarvatra samabuddhayaha te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rataha kleshodhikatarastesham avyakta saktachetasam avyakta higate dukkham dehavadbhiravapyate.
ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यासमत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्त मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि नाचिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम्। ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे भक्तियोगो नाम द्वादशोऽध्यायः। श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Uttamam. Thank you so much, guys. What a beautiful recitation. And I think that you can hear what listening and watching them, you can hear what I was talking about in the beginning of this talk about short and long vowels, Alpaprana and Mahaprana, because they demonstrated it so nicely. You heard in that last few verses there where the clear sure, there's that extended vowel. Avni really extended it there beautifully. You can see that there where the yellow is, because I've used color coding, that's where the Mahaprana is. They're aspirating there and then they're They're bringing out their long vowels 2 beats long. So really, really nice to see, and a really great example of what we were just discussing about those nuances in pronunciation and how they can be mastered through practice. So thank you so much, guys, for doing that for us today and for sharing all that you've learned over the last year. And I can't wait to come back together next year for World Sanskrit Day and show people again even more what we have learned in that time and how much we have advanced in our studies. So with that being said, I would just like to mention at the end here that my new book has just come out. All of my students get these books as standard, as part of their course, but they are now available for anyone to purchase. So if anyone is interested in learning Sanskrit, they can buy these books now. They are available on Lulu. So Lulu, www.lulu.com. I will put the links in the description of this talk. They have been, the Varnamala has been split up here into parts 1 and 2. The reason for that is because that is how I teach it. I teach the vowels first, then I teach the consonants. So we have a book on vowels and there is a book on consonants so that you can split it up, make it digestible. The children aren't going to be overwhelmed by a huge and vast alphabet. And they are available now on lulu.com. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us for this special recording for World Sanskrit Day. Thank you so much for supporting me and my students. Would you like to say bye to everybody?
Hare Krishna, bye.
Thanks so much, guys. And thank you to everyone who watched. If you could like, share and subscribe to this channel and share this video and support us that way, that would be super awesome. If you could share the books or this talk or anything that inspires you by Bhakti Kids Sangha, that would be most helpful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare